I am continuing my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a bit as I move along. So now we will finish Malachi, and thus finish the Old Testament. Now I mentioned in my introduction that Christ quotes Malachi in 3rd Nephi, and Moroni quotes Malachi. Moroni quotes only Malachi chapter 4, which is what we're going to read right now. Christ, however, quoted both chapters 3 and 4, because these are the two chapters that deal with the second coming, with the last days and the second coming. Christ quoted both. Moroni quoted only chapter 4. Both chapters are quoted again in the Doctrine and Covenants, other than Moroni's words. They are quoted in other places. Malachi is an important, these two chapters are important prophecies. So let us finish Malachi. At the second coming, the proud and wicked shall be burned as stubble. Elijah shall return before that great and dreadful day. For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly, shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and he shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. And he shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in the day that I shall do this, saith the Lord of hosts. Remember ye the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all Israel, with the statutes and the judgments. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. It is nice to end things on a short chapter. There's a lot of things here, even in this. Only 6 verses, but what do we have? The day is coming that will burn as an oven, and the wicked will be destroyed, and the righteous, it says the righteous will tread them down, for they will be as ashes. And then the law of Moses, it will be remembered. And Elijah will return. This is the most famous one. Elijah returns to turn the hearts of the children to the fathers, and the hearts of the fathers to the children. The interesting thing here. We all know this is talking about the salvation for the dead and the genealogy work. And it is fulfilled when Elijah comes to the Kirtland Temple and restores these sealing keys. It was somewhat fulfilled when Elijah appeared on the Mount of Transfiguration and these keys were given to Peter, James, and John. But the full fulfillment, the true fulfillment, was with Joseph Smith. But the really interesting thing to me is how Malachi is quoted in other scriptures. Now, these verses 4 and 5 about Elijah, they're quoted in section 110 of the Doctrine and Covenants, almost word for word. But then we have this in section 128. Joseph Smith quotes these verses of Elijah, and then he states in verse 18, I might have rendered a plainer translation to this. Plainer translation. Now we read in the Joseph Smith translation, we've been reading in it, and he does a marvelous job of clearing up some of the more obscure passages, of clarifying things, adding to our knowledge. And he states here that he could do the same with Malachi. And then if we turn to the Joseph Smith history in the Pearl of Great Price, we read verses 37 through 39, Moroni is quoting Malachi. But verse 38 says he quoted the 5th verse thus, Behold, I will reveal unto you the priesthood by the hand of Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And in verse 39, he quotes the verse 6, this, And he shall plant in the hearts of the children the promises made to the fathers, and the hearts of the children shall turn to their fathers. If it were not so, the whole earth would be utterly wasted at his coming. Now, these are significant differences here. He's going to reveal the priesthood. He's not just going to send Elijah. He's not just going to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the children to the fathers. He is going to plant a seed in the hearts of the children, and the children will turn to their fathers. And through the priesthood, they will be connected to their fathers through the sealing power. And without that, the whole earth, all creation would be a waste. So you would expect that this change would be in the Joseph Smith translation. He said he could give a plainer translation. And we have Moroni giving us this quote here. But in the Joseph Smith translation, at the end of the book of Zechariah, the book just before Malachi, it has this note. Following the changes to Zechariah, we read, Malachi correct, finished on 2nd day of July, 1833. Malachi is correct. What we have in the Old Testament is what Malachi wrote. And yet Joseph Smith says he can render a plainer translation. Why didn't he? It seems to me that Malachi, what we have in the Old Testament, is what Malachi himself wrote. And it was plain enough to the Jews, so it didn't need to be changed. This is what he wrote. But Moroni expounded on it a little bit. He didn't give a direct quote. He expounded on the meaning to make it more clear for us in the modern day. And that's what Joseph Smith is saying, that he could make it more clear for us. But it is still a correct translation of what Malachi wrote. Which indicates to me that for the entirety of the Joseph Smith translation, Joseph Smith is not editorializing. He is not adding things that were not there. He is rendering it as the original authors wrote it. And that's the one exception. The one exception is in Moses. If you will recall, near the beginning of Moses, the last verse of chapter 1. These words were spoken unto Moses in the mount, the name of which shall not be known among the children of men, and now they are spoken unto you. Show them not unto any except them that believe, even so, amen. That parenthetical verse was added by God when he was revealing the original writing to Joseph Smith. But everything else is what the original authors wrote. There is no editorializing. There is no adding in, or at least very little. We have an indication here that there was some, but I think that unless we have an indication like this, we should accept that this was the original author's work. I'm sorry for getting into that tangent when reading Malachi, but it was something that I found interesting and thought needed to be said. We end this year. This will end the Old Testament. So now we turn back to the Book of Mormon. The small plates, Book of Jerem is next, and we will be reading through the Book of Helaman before turning back to the New Testament. So I will see you in the future.